Woo.
Woo.
Hey everyone, it's officially 10 a.m., but I'm going to give about another minute for people to join last minute here. So just give it one moment and we'll get started. All right, everyone, let's get started. Thank you guys so much for being here on our webinar about strategies for closing sales faster. We're very excited to be kind of working with this partnership with PandaDoc. Let me click to the next slide. My name is Jenna. I'm on the marketing team here at Copper. I have Bethany on the line, who's also on the marketing team at PandaDoc. Speaking with you today is going to be Matt Carrera, who's our senior account executive here at Copper.
Hello.
And Patrick Downs, who's an account executive at PandaDoc. I'm going to let them introduce themselves a little bit further. But first, I wanted to let you know that we want to make this as interactive as possible. We do have slides. We have a deck together for you, but we're kind of going to go more conversational. So anytime you have a question, anytime you have just a point to talk about, feel free to pop it in the chat, raise your hand. We'll unmute you so we can have more of a conversational webinar. I will let you guys take it over and do an intro here for you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jenna. Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Carrera. I'm, as Jenna mentioned, I'm a senior account executive here at Copper. A little bit of information on my background. It's not quite tech sales all the way. I was co-founder of a sustainable seafood startup and also was in the sustainable seafood space, leading sales teams for just over a decade. So in the tech space for almost 3 years now, and excited to walk you through this presentation with Patrick.
Yeah, it's a good segue. My name is Patrick. My background's also very different. I actually was going to be an English teacher and ended up getting a job offer from Yelp and advertising. So I've always taken more of a teaching and coaching mindset because I have that teaching background. So I'm hoping we can use some of that today.
That's great. Okay, so on to the agenda. Always a great way to start any presentation. Just let your folks know what you're going to be up to, what you're going to be covering, so you're all on the same page. So today we're going to be talking about, velocifying sales conversations. We have dealing with objections, how to avoid being ghosted. And if you're not familiar with the term ghosting, it's basically when you are reaching out, managing a sales process, and then for some reason they just disappear. Not sure why, they're ghosting you. So we'll cover that. Working out the specifics of kind of navigating the sales process, how to send a successful proposal, potentially and ideally with PandaDoc's beautiful software, and then how to seal the deal on the conversation that you're having with your prospect. So let's move into common objections. This is a list of what we feel are the most common objections people hear. It's too expensive, they don't have budget, they don't want a contract. You can read the list, and really what these are, and for me, and I'll let Patrick speak to this in a moment, but objections for me are buying signals. A lot of people, sales reps in particular, get a little bit thrown off by objections and they kind of cringe when they hear them. But for me, it's really something that I enjoy working through, because that means that the prospect and the potential buyer is being very thoughtful and insightful in the way that they're evaluating our software, which means that we're a contender. If they didn't want to waste the time and energy with us, then they would just brush us off, potentially ghost us. And so this is a list of ones that I've seen, and Patrick will elaborate a little bit on his as well. Now, some tips for handling the objections. Really what the common mistake that a lot of people make is to jump too quickly to answer an objection, right? It's an uncomfortable situation. You're being kind of put on the spot. And so the knee-jerk reaction is to just quickly respond and fire something back. But the proper way to handle it is actually to, take a moment, take a breath, have that pause, really let the person that you're speaking to know that you're hearing their concern and their objections, and therefore that you're going to answer in a thoughtful way. So take a beat, take a moment, really mirror the cadence of the prospect, the person that you're talking to, making sure that you're validating their objections. And then once you go through, you're just going to start to isolate them. Is that the main objection, or are there others? You're really trying to just work through it and be respectful of the process, and let them know that, to Patrick's point, his background, wanting to be an English teacher, you're just here to educate and help them to work through this tough process, which is an evaluation of a software. So I'll pass it over to you, Patrick, and then back up. What are some common objections that you see at PandaDoc, and how do you handle those?
Yeah, definitely with a SaaS company, the biggest one is I need a trial. Besides that, we're getting a lot of more general ones like I need to think about it. There are other competing priorities like an ERP we might be trying to implement. The timing isn't right, which is one that I think everybody hears. And is terrifying to me sometimes. But with your mindset of, hey, this is a buying signal and it's somebody that's really thinking really hard about it. We don't want to overcome it, which a lot of people say you try to overcome an objection. I think it's more understanding it and working with them on solving it. And even if it is a valid concern, if it is, maybe the timing isn't right. So I think the real purpose of this framework is to understand that. And then if it isn't really a concern that needs to stand in the way of you two working together, how do we go forward? So I want to take a second to ask the chat, like, what do you guys see as far as objection? What's the most common one that you guys are facing right now? And
Patrick and I we'll do some role playing. So give us a good one. I'll be the prospect. Patrick can be the rep, and then we'll try and solve it for you.
I'm gonna remember that, Matt, that you're making me do this.
Yes.
I'm gonna hold it against you.
We gotta have some fun here today.
What do you guys got?
We could play the Jeopardy music.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I need more details. Price is too high.
Or I need more.
Reed Anderson sounds like a nice guy.
I'm happy to be the selling school is difficult. Okay, great.
That's a lot of them. Which one do you want to choose, Matt?
Let's see. I mean, happy with my current vendor, just to speak to the list and maybe to like talk through all of them because these are all really good really quickly. Happy with my current vendor. That's, there's nothing you can really do, right? In the conversation, you're trying to hear their needs and isolate some pains that you're going to solve for. So that one is a really tough one. And that's really kind of, I don't know, how do you feel, Patrick? That's almost the end of the conversation most of the time, unless you can dive deeper and uncover some things in the past conversation that you can revisit. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I think usually you're hearing this on probably a prospecting call and less in the sales cycle. So I think we're looking at a lot of stuff that maybe is later on in the sales cycle. But I think your answer for that's pretty clear.
Okay.
Price is too high is a good one. I like that.
How do you handle that generally?
Price is too high. I think this framework is really good for it. So just to kind of walk through it, I would be pause, and then I would say price is too high. Adding an inflection at the end, you're kind of validating what they're saying, and typically they'll actually tell you more. So I did that actually today, and the person went on to say, yeah, I'm comparing it to one of your competitors. And then that's information that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So I'd say, okay, look, that's a valid concern. It sounds like you're really passionate about getting the best deal and also making sure this is a good fit. And then pause again. And then if they don't say anything else, I would move to, if we somehow manage to solve that for you completely, what other obstacles would we have to overcome? That's the isolating point, right? So we're trying to see if there's anything else that's really there, or if it is the price. If they say, no, that would be it, then I would get their permission by saying, mind if I bounce a few ideas off of you or a few thoughts off of you? And then ask some more clarifying questions. Is it the total price or is it the term? And then I would go from there to further isolate it and then reframe it as, look, we can talk about price. We don't typically sell on price. But if we could match that, would the value of X be worth it, right?
Yeah, and that's a good point. It's all about value, and really a question about price or balking at price is just an indication that the value hasn't been shown enough. For looking at anything where you're going to provide value, it's all about an investment, right? So when I'm talking about copper in general, or specifically, and someone says, oh, it's versus your competitor, it's too high. And I just kind of go upon the conversation notes that I've had and say, well, in our conversation, you mentioned X, Y, and Z as being huge problems for you. It seems like based upon the demo that we're going to save your team upwards of 20 hours a week in productivity. So at this point, it seems that copper is not actually a cost, and it's not, it is a cost, but the healthier way to look at it is an investment. And that investment should pay off, in spades. And how, what have I not shown you that will provide that as an example for you, I guess, is another kind of roundabout way of doing that.
I like that a lot. I also like ending off with the phrase, what part of your concern do you feel like is left unaddressed? To really confirm that you dealt with it or help them understanding it, because a lot of people will just assume that they addressed it and move on, but it just stays there. So that's a good way to make sure you did it right.
Awesome. So, not wanting a contract, that's depending on the product that you're offering. We have a month-to-month offering here at Copper, which speaks to that directly. So that's kind of an easy out for me with that. Contract is just, if they say they don't want a contract, you can spin it back to them and ask them how they feel if they don't have a contract. It's kind of a mutually binding thing that shows that you're both invested in the partnership. I think it would provide security and help them in the process. But that is a challenging one to navigate the contract conversation.
Yeah. And then looking at some more of the questions. Anything else you want to address before we move on to the next slide?
No, I think that looks good. The only one that seems to jump out as well is they're working on spreadsheets. and how to justify the cost. We in the CRM space, for us, spreadsheets, there's two ways that people are coming to us. They're on spreadsheets, and that process has just become so painful that the inefficiencies are overwhelming their process. Or they're on a system that they don't like and they need something more intuitive and easy to use that their team is going to enjoy. So with the spreadsheets, it's all about discovery. You just need to really dive deep into what are the pain points, like what are the reasons that they're even having the conversation. Why have they reached out? Why are they taking your call? If everything's fine and they don't see the need for a system that's going to move them away from their spreadsheet existence, then you don't have a deal. So that's really the way to work the spreadsheet situation. Okay, well, thank you for all those. Patrick, I'm going to pass it over to you for the. Oops, I got too many screens going here at once. I don't drive.
And actually, real quick, someone on a Galaxy J2, I don't know their name, posted a question about what is tipping the bucket. I just want to address that real quick. So tipping the bucket would typically be a way to make sure you've addressed everything and there's not other things on the table that you're not looking at. So the question like, what other concerns might there be if we address this, or what part of your concern is left unaddressed would tip the bucket of make sure you can move on. Staring at. All right, cool. We can go to the next slide now. Being ghosted. All right, so it's in the dating world and it's in sales too. It's a big question I get all the time, and it's something that's hard to avoid.
No one's ever asking you for dates, Patrick. Come on.
No, you're wrong, Matt. I'm sorry. We can talk about that later. But in sales, it's definitely happened, as I'm sure it has to you. And there's a couple of things that I focus on doing early on in the process that can help prevent it. A lot of people are asking, like, how do I fix this once it's happened? And unfortunately, except for some like cheesy tactics like the close in the file email and that stuff, there's not a lot to do at that point. So you want to start it right at the front. So what I do now is I start with a respect contract. It sounds something like, hey, John, if we're going through PandaDoc and it looks like this isn't a good fit for you, are you willing to tell me no? Are you comfortable telling me no? And they would typically say yes. And say, okay, so on that same coin, if I'm going through this and I feel like this is not a good fit for your business, are you comfortable with me telling you no as well? And they would say yes. So we have a contract now that we can say no to each other, and that's okay. And then I would say, okay, so if we don't say no to each other and we decide to go forward, I'm going to ask for a next step on the calendar at the end of this call. Is that okay with you? And I would say yes. So at this point, we've completely gotten this agreed upon that if it's a good fit, we're going to move forward to another call, which prevents that ghosting if they're willing to be honest with you. And a lot of that comes with rapport as well. But Matthew, do you do anything like that on your calls?
Yeah, absolutely. I always lead with the agenda and then, letting them know that I'm there as an educational resource. They of course can tell me that it's a horrible fit, but I also am pretty upfront that I'll be the first one to tell them if it's not worth moving forward at all to look at it. I really look for holes in a perfect product fit, which is what we're after, is checking all the boxes as it pertains to their needs. And then if we can check all those boxes on the call, then like you mentioned, I will prompt them and just say, then we'll put next steps on the calendar and talk about pricing and how we can get your team on board and all that stuff. And then I just ask them if that all sounds good, and they confirm, and then we can move on from there. Just getting their buy-in essentially.
And there's an extra step you can take with that buy-in too. I know sometimes they'll be listening in on calls and the prospect will be like, yeah, I guess, or something of that nature, or maybe. You want to get a clear yes, right? And you'd say, hey, John, like typically I would just get a yes to that. So I want to figure out what's the conversation.
I can tell
just call it up.
Tough, John.
You don't really mean it, John. So I think that's part of provoking engagement, which is the second point too. Making sure it's actually being interesting enough and providing enough value that people actually want to respond to you. This can also come down to your rapport with someone. So if you have a good relationship, a lot of people are way more willing to actually answer your questions, and kind of playing into that healthy tension those kind of questions introduce. But yeah, I mean, also the third being the next step on the calendar. We've sort of touched on that, but I have a rule of thumb where I'm not going to leave a meeting within the next step, because presented at the top. I think that's super fair. It's an expectation that I've set during the call. We're going to be talking again if it's a good fit, and if it's not, we're going to move it out of the pipeline and shake hands and say goodbye.
Sounds
Looking
fair.
at the fourth one, time limited incentive. Do you guys do this at all? Do you tie deals to time?
Well, we have certain promotions that will kind of come and go through the months depending on what the team has put out. So that's really the only time limited incentive stuff that happens is, teams of their size approaching a decision window of what they're looking at could have this, added benefit that is now at my, that my director has given me permission to offer as part of a promotion for this month. That's really the only other time. Also, and I know we discussed this, the onboarding queue or the implementation can be heavier at certain times versus others. So as the consultant and educational resource on the Copper side, I'll just let them know, hey, you have a timeline of going live by the end of December. We had a big push, a lot of signups last month, and the queue's looking pretty full. So I just want to let you know that the sooner you can do this, the better, just to guide you through the process to meet their expectations.
Okay, that makes sense. That's not too far off, and we have a whole script around this. I don't want to give out all the secret sauce for free. You got to leave some in the bottle, right? But there's a script we have around confirming that this is a good fit, right? Important thing, and that they'd want to move forward with PandaDoc, and then going from there to say, okay, like what would be a realistic timeline for us to partner? And if I have gotten that early in the conversation, I bring that back up again and say, okay, if we can do it by Friday, then I am able to give you this. It doesn't necessarily have to be a discount. It could be something that's good for both parties. Sometimes trading things like referrals. But I think we're going to go more on like a mutual action plan, but giving and taking, I think, is a big part of avoiding ghosting too, to make sure that you're providing and also asking, which I think is completely fair.
One more thing, just building on this, I know we're not trying to gobble up too much time. Something I've started to do recently is if say there's like follow-up emails, like trying to get someone's attention, always putting a value add. It's not just an ask, you're actually giving. So starting with, hey, this new feature was just rolled out, or with this case study made me think of you, just showing that you're not just in it for yourself, but you're actually truly vested in their best interest as well. It goes a long way.
It does. I respect and give the respect.
Respect. Booyaka Shah.
Do you want to pause on some questions real quick? And we've gotten quite a few. How do you usually ask for the deal? I think it's a good one for you, Matt. How do you go for the close?
Booyaka Shah, love it. So the asking for the deal is really depends on how the conversation goes. If the demo has gone really well and we've done a thorough discovery, and during the call, everyone seems really excited and the enthusiasm is shared on both sides, and we're checking perfect product fit, and I have the decision makers on the call, I will ask for it in that moment. Say, okay, we've identified that Copper is a perfect product fit. Would you agree? They say yes. Go, are there any red flags, anything you're seeing that is, throwing concerns as the key decision makers that this wouldn't be a great fit? No. Yes, we can handle the objections. But if no, okay, then great. The pricing that it looks like is going to be in this tier. Does that fit your budget? Perfect. So do you want to get started today? I can get you in the onboarding queue and make sure that your team is set up for success. I tend to really like the in-person ask, but if I are having it's really different from prospect to prospect, right? If I'm having a lot of email interaction with someone that's very busy and they prefer that channel of text messaging or emailing, then I'll go down that route as well. I really tailor it to a specific need.
Great answer. I like that, man.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, it's very helpful. I think I'm going to use that. Yeah, I'm learning something here too.
How do you do it, Patrick? What's your preferred way?
I was raised in a boiler room, so everything was on the phone, right? So a lot of it was I would send the contract out and we would review it together. We would go over pricing, and then I'd ask, like, hey, are there any final questions? Reconfirm value, and say the next step would be signing off on the agreement and activating your account. Just click the box below, and then we can go from there. So very straightforward.
I like that.
Just ask.
And I think that leads to this question that Galaxy J2 just asked. If a lead is quite busy and just answering in really delayed time, how can we handle this? I'm just really straightforward with them. You've reached out, however they came into your funnel, if they've raised their hand and said, I want to learn more about your product, and then are just giving you the runaround, then you just have to be straightforward and be like, you asked to learn more about the product. I'm here to help you, but it seems like the time is not right. So if I'm right in my assumption, then just reach out when the timing is right. But if you are in fact interested, as you hinted, at learning more, then I'm ready when you are. Just let me know what timeline works for you. So you're being a little bit firm-handed, but not inappropriate. Just being honest with them and everyone's, respect of everyone's time.
I like that. And we got another question coming in from Melina. I think I've seen this a couple times, asking about why change, right? I'm sure you guys get that. Hey, we've been using an Excel spreadsheet for, why should I use Copper? Or someone's like, I've been using Google Documents forever. Why would I change to PandaDoc, right? So I think a big way to figure out how this is for you is to call your current clients that have changed from something and ask them, and then use their language, because your client selling for you is the biggest thing that you can do in your sales process. Using the language that people in the industry you sell to, this specifically being for like hotels, is going to be key. Like, what specifically do they say and how do they say it? Repeat that back. I think that'll help a lot.
And you can also dive in. This is really where the discovery is going to come into play here. You're not trying to, create fear or stoke concerns, but if they're having a conversation with you, you can, being that the hotel is kind of, seems like one of the verticals that you're calling into, do the background research, know what the trends are, and ask them if they're aware of those trends. Maybe you have some case studies that call in a similar company that has been in business for 40 plus years, and the tremendous efficiencies that were gained and return on investment they saw with your product. Always a good way to go about doing things. Just get them to think about it. It's as much of you learning from them as you educating them as well. If I phrase that right.
I think that's perfect. I think we should move on. I think we're coming up on the half hour here, but we'll get to some more questions at the end if we have time. All right, working out the specifics. So this is going to be kind of on the same lines as ghosting, to make sure that you have everything that you need to move the deal forward. So keeping an accurate account of everything that you and the prospect have discussed is a big deal. I use Evernote. I have my template, filling things in, and I'm always creating a mutual action plan with that template, sharing it with the prospect as well. This is something I might even put in the proposal, saying like, okay, my next step is to talk to my manager about X. You're going to be talking to the CRO, and just making sure that we each have something that we're going to be doing so we can hold each other accountable. And that way there's a sense of equality between you and the prospect, and you're working together to move this as a project and not you trying to sell them something that they feel like. You do anything like that in your process, Matt?
Yeah, mutual action plan, mutual close plan. You're just laying it out, and it's generally hinged to the timeline that they let you know about in terms of when they'd like to move forward, and then you're just working backward from that date.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's no question about when it's coming in. That's always the best. And a big part of that is mapping out the process early on as well. So one of the questions that I'll ask at the beginning when I first meet someone is, hey, when was the bought a major software for X company. And then that way I'll know, okay, like how involved is this person actually? And if they said yes, I would say, okay, let's talk about that process. Like, how did that start? And then go through that. And that way you're actually mapping out how they like to buy software, and you're going to figure out what's going to work best for them. And you can adjust your process if yours isn't going to work, because you don't want to into someone who's going to work for them.
Very true. Okay.
Any questions on this, guys, before we move on? So there's a question in the chat that's been posted a couple of times, Matt, about reaching out to a cold lead and they're not responding. I think you had spoke earlier to, hey, it seems like the timing's not right and we can reconnect at a later date. Please reach out if you need anything from me, right? Is that how you would handle that?
Yeah, and you could get a little more creative, right? So the most traditional channels are email, phone call, text message. I know that some companies will, depending on their level, like if you're looking at a CEO or a CFO, CRO, or just a VP, maybe a book that's just recently come out that would be, beneficial for them to have just in their knowledge base or in their library, or they could then share with someone that's in their network. It's just something that goes above and beyond with like a nice personal note, just saying, hey, I know you're busy. I've tried you on a few different channels, but I'd love to chat when you have a chance. Just wanted to give you this gift. That will get people's attention for sure.
Cool. Mutual action plan, specific examples. For me, they're not that complicated because we have a pretty transactional sale, but it would typically be, I'm going to talk to my manager to see if I can get some sort of incentive. Then they would be talking to their CRO, presenting the demo recording and the price. And then maybe they'd be sharing that recording as well with people internally and talking to finance. And then I would be making sure that I give them all the resources they need, like maybe a case study and some comparison sheets. So we each have part of this plan to work together on. And we might even have deliverables as far as dates on all of these. So like I would get this done by this time. On a more complex enterprise sale, these definitely change a lot, but that's an example of something I deal with. What about you, Matt?
Yep, perfect. The only thing that I would add is to get their buy-in on the plan when you present it. So just confirm that this looks good. Do you want to change, add anything? Let me know.
Perfect. I think that's smart. How many days should you wait until connecting with a lead again? I think that depends on the cadence you want to build out. I write my own cadences and I typically put 3 days between each. Your thoughts?
I do the desperate dating move. I'll call them 5 times in a row and then why don't you want to talk to me?
Okay, I see why you don't have the ghosting problem. And
yeah, I don't know why. I see a little pushy. Yeah, I'm probably about the same. 2-3 days. Really depends on how things are playing out and what's working for me in that month or that quarter.
Cool. All right, let's move on to the next one. All right, this is my domain. We've entered my lair. Proposals. Some things that I think really help. They're listed here, and also just some tips I have. Tailoring it to the customer and restating the pain are the 2 biggest ones. I see so many proposals that are like 20 pages long and all they want is a quote. I think, Matt, we talked about that earlier. So they just want to see the price and you're giving them this crazy homework to do. Really make sure that it's fit for the conversation, the person you're talking to. Ours are typically 3 to 4 pages and they include almost all the elements on the next page. You have no excuse really if you have a 20-page proposal and you're selling to small businesses. But if you're selling to enterprise, they're going to want to see more detail, and you probably do want a 20-page proposal. So it all depends. And then on the restating the pain point, I use an executive summary to go through all the problems that we're going to be actually solving. And I do this live on the call inside of PandaDoc. So I will have a template of the most common ones, but then I'll change them depending on our conversation and just really kind of like stick into it, kind of like twisting the knife. Just like you said that you lost a $20,000 deal because you couldn't find the contract, right? He goes, yep. Okay, not only are we talking about it again, it's on the document where he can sign off. So I think those two are key, and also making sure that you're going over it with them. Oftentimes if somebody asks for a proposal from you and there's like no real engagement, it's just because they want to get off the phone and it's just what they think they should be saying. So I think also confirming like what they want to see in the proposal is really key. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, it all sounds great. I like the last part about confirming what they want to see. Very, very helpful.
Yeah.
This is your.
Oh yeah. Do you ever put like recordings or anything in your proposals?
No, I haven't. How about you? Are you putting recordings in there? Should I be doing that?
Yes. Yeah, I record every demo for the people that want it recorded, and then I actually insert it through PandaDoc into the proposal so they can share it internally.
Yep. Okay.
Super nice. That way you don't really have the objection of like, well, my boss hasn't seen it yet. It's like, well, if you've seen the proposal, see the demo. So
True.
that's always key.
That is true.
Cool. So let's look at some questions. If you don't have anything to say on this, if you do, you definitely go for it.
Yeah, it's great.
All right, cool. We got Aman Singh up here. What are your thoughts on asking about a deadline or when I do the prospect wishes to close the deal, either with me or someone else? So I think this is stating on figuring out timeline or when it's appropriate for the deal to come in.
Yep. Yeah. Just solidifying timeline, buy-in. That's going to go back to the endpoint that you're working backwards from to get the mutual close plan in place, to just button up everything, make sure that you're crossing all the T's, dotting the I's, and creating a very succinct process for the prospect.
Cool. Can you show us an example of a proposal you use? Can I? That's a question. We do have some examples on our website. We have different template galleries, but there might be a way for us to share after. Cool.
Okay.
Let's move on to the next slide. All right. Yeah, this is the the most exciting one. The elements of a proposal. Nothing is more attractive than a TOC, table of contents. You gotta love it.
Yeah.
So as far as what I think are the winning elements, I think this is a good gold standard. But again, it comes back to you need to tailor this to your prospect. But you really can't go wrong with this. I'm able to put all on a proposal that's about 3 pages. So I don't think this is too overkill. Things like terms in your MSA can actually be put on a landing page, so you can just hyperlink from it. People waste a lot of time in their proposal with legal language when you can link away from it still legally and get a signature on it, which I think is great. And also the executive summary I spoke on before, but I think that is the most important part, and you should be spending most of the time on that in the About Us section. So the About Us also covering like case studies. So how do you use a case study in a proposal?
Are you asking me?
Oh yeah, I am.
Oh boy. Well, exactly how you'd think you use a case study in a proposal. You just find the case study that is relevant to their needs. So I'll look for, a few key things that the case study participant has experienced. And as long as they link to what I can, gather the prospect will experience and benefit from as well, it doesn't even have to be in the same vertical. I'll just call that out. But it's always nice to just see, number one, how flexible the tool is, but also just them basically putting themselves in the shoes of others and seeing quickly how it will play out for them, hopefully as well.
And I really like using case studies mostly because I'm presenting the proposal on the call, right? So it's a good opportunity to tell a story. I think a lot of people forget to tell stories, and being able to speak to somebody's specific experience visually helps a lot of people like actually jog their memory, right? You don't have to just make something up, which is nice. So it's good to go through that, what people have seen with your product and the kind of experience they had beforehand, and then the future state they saw after.
Yep.
But yeah, besides that, I think this is pretty gold standard. Like I said before, is there anything you would add here?
I think, just going back to the personalizing it to the specific needs of the person. A lot of times I'll just present pricing. I like to not give it all at once as well. I find that I'll sometimes drip the information, and that also helps to not be ghosted, right? So if you give the proposal, you give it all at once, then you've kind of like given them everything, and you don't really have anything else to give or to entice with. So sharing little bits of the puzzle, but not revealing the whole picture, is just a great way to have a reason to like follow up. So if I don't include a case study in the pricing, but they haven't confirmed that the pricing looks good, then I can share a case study in the next email and just confirm that they saw the pricing. So it gives me that adding value, asking a question, you get that give and take going on. It just feels good.
Little snack-sized proposals. I like it.
Proposals. Yep. Just get the little mini goldfish packet. It's perfect.
I was thinking Snickers. I haven't eaten lunch. So we've got another question here. TOC, yeah, this would be table of contents. So, I mean, this is just good to have. Plug in PandaDoc. I know this is shameless, but we actually have a TOC where you can click on the sections. So it'll like bring you to it. So that's always key to have the headings to match up. But it's just good to let people know what's going to happen. I like being prepared personally. I don't want to be bamboozled by a document I'm reading. It's kind of like we did the agenda at the beginning, right? What kind of information?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. You just got to confirm what you're going to see, paint the picture, guide them through it.
Perfect. Okay. Anything else on this one, or you think we're good?
I think this is glorious.
Glorious. I like that. Fantastic. All right. I think we can just field questions at this point. We still have some time, right?
Yeah, questions. Fantastic.
Because we got that Q&A tab. I've been looking at it, but it looks like we have.
I saw that someone had asked about being emailed the PDF of this. Yes, you will. Just to plug that in there. All attendees will get all the slides as well as the recording of this.
Also, I just want to point out that I'm glad that Harshio liked my pun. Bamboo, the bamboo. Get it? It's funny.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right. I'm looking through the Q&A section right now. Do you guys see anything good?
Ours isn't opening
Here, yeah.
Ours isn't opening for some reason.
Yeah.
Oh man, that puts me on
Hey,
the
Patrick.
spot.
Bethany here. Hi, guys. Hi, attendees. I think Mark had a really good one, which you kind of touched on a little bit. They don't have, he says they don't have contracts. We just ask for a commitment and then ask when they'll pay by. So it kind of makes it difficult. So what kind of advice would you suggest for Mark to maybe jazz up his quote or contract, or somebody who just kind of sends like legal terms versus a proposal?
I highly recommend that you have someone sign something. Even from a psychological standpoint, it's like, okay, we're doing business together. So I think that's really important. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
Get the signature.
You got to get that signature, man. Or I know some like SaaS companies will have a self-service, rep-assisted self-service where they'll just click into it. So I think if it's more like that, it's just about instructing people what they need to do to accomplish the next step of working with you. Yeah,
but also understanding that if there's no contract involved, there are companies that just exist on handshakes. So just understanding the cadence there, and then tailoring to the structure that we've laid out as it pertains to your sales process. So there is some variance there, but just the takeaway would be to look at the structure as with any guidance that anyone ever gives in the professional world. It's not going to be perfectly tailored to your needs. Just take the pieces that make most sense for you, and then just make it your own.
Fantastic. Okay, so I saw another question about when people say, "I will let you know," or my other favorite, "Thanks for the presentation," right? Nothing hurts more than hearing those words. Uh, but I think the respect contract at the beginning kind of stops that, because you're going to be asking at the end, and you're telling them this either for their business or for a next step, and them letting you know, you would have to say, okay, well, I will assume that means that you do not think is a good fit. Am I incorrect? And that way you have that as a fallback, and you have more structure to your conversation. I don't hear that as much now that I've started doing it.
That's great.
Right. Any other questions? This is a big one over here with Gregory Grigg. I like that name. Gregory Grigg. You guys still not able to open it?
No, it's
No.
not opening for us.
Your eyes and ears.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the gist of this question is, would you say that follow-up emails work better than phone calls? What do you think, Matt?
Follow-up emails work better than phone calls. I think that either one, it's really impossible to make a case one way or the other. I think that the winning recipe, for me at least, is email followed with a phone call, or phone call followed with an email that's followed up shortly within the 3 days with another phone call that references that phone call and that email.
That's a good point.
It's more of a, yeah, you kind of use them off of each other, and if they are interested, then they will get back to you, because they're going to feel bad that they don't, that they're making you run around so much.
I much prefer phone calls, just because if you like take the time to try to address something on an email, they could just not read it. But if you call somebody, you're having a conversation, and I think it's a lot easier to have someone understand you and have you understand them, more importantly, over the phone. So I always ask people to call me in my follow-up if I can't get a hold of them. Okay, looking
That's
here.
great.
E-sign versus traditional contracts for mid 5-figure contracts. Okay. Are you guys using e-sign at all through DocuSign or anything?
Yes, we are.
Good. So what do you like about that versus the traditional like print, sign, scan, wet signature?
It's just much easier to get to transact deals. If all you have to do is to click a spot where your name will automatically sign in, and then it works perfectly. You can also have, assistants or someone that has the authority to sign on behalf of someone with the login credentials. That's also really helpful. So just ways for everyone to get things done more efficiently is my take on that.
Quick story too. So I was refinancing a car loan. I'm going to save $100 a month, right? This is great for me. And I find out that because of legal government regulations, I have to fill out like 30 pages of paperwork and sign it like physically. So I have to go, I don't have a printer at home. So I have to go to the library, print it out, fill it out, go to UPS, send it out. And then I send it out, and I almost didn't because it was so frustrating, and it took me like 2 hours to do this entire process. And then at that point, I get it back, and there's a mistake on it, so I have to redo the whole process over again. That is completely removed with electronic contracts. If there's a mistake on something, it can just be easily resolved in seconds instead of sometimes weeks. So I actually ended up not going forward with $100 savings a month, and this guy did not close this deal because he didn't have e-signature. So I think that's something to consider in any sort of contract. All right. Looking. How to avoid dropouts in the sales and communication process. Dropouts, so ghosting.
Ghosting. Yeah, we all know what to do at this point.
We all know. We all know. All right, we got some, Mark. So we got some on the side now if you want to take some of those, Matt. Can you see the regular chat?
Yep. Let's see. Size of, which one should we go?
This is a good one.
If you send a proposal to someone who contacted you and then isn't replying, how many times would you follow up before sending them an email message, basically putting the ball back in their court and just telling them to contact you if they become interested? I think for me, they've requested a proposal, you've shared it with them. This goes back to the mutual respect that you've created in the process. Hopefully you haven't shared the proposal too early on, in which case you're more likely to not get a response. But if you've shared in a timely manner and they're just being inconsiderate, then I think you're completely within your rights to call them out a little bit and say, based on the timeline that we agreed upon or the needs that we discussed, it seems like a significant pain that you were trying to solve with our software. Am I wrong in assuming that Copper is still a good fit, or has something changed? Please let me know anything. Does that help? So I like you spoke to one of the questions about the investing in electronic contracts versus traditional PDFs. I think that's great. Nobody wants to run around. I actually had our printer broke as well recently at the Carrera household, and we were out of commission for a while, and we were definitely feeling the pain of having to, return things and print and sign contracts and things. So I would say electronic, much easier, much preferred.
Matt and Patrick, I'm going to plug PandaDoc really quick. Or if you have PandaDoc, you can see when they open your proposal, when they view it, and how much time they spent on each page. So then you can correlate your follow-up with when they're actively viewing the proposal and either call them or shoot them an email. It is a little creepy, but that's why we've put those detailed doc analytics in there so you can execute prompt follow-up.
Those are very creepy.
At your disposal. Same thing with the email. We have email tracking, open read receipts. You can send out a campaign and then see when people open emails and follow up immediately. I was just thinking of you. Nope, I knew you opened the email, but I was also thinking of you as well.
Yeah, we can even see when an email is forwarded and get their email address. So if it gets forwarded to like the CFO, let's say Richard, we can see it. And oftentimes I'll just stick them on the next calendar invite and call them after finding them. And like I said, we're very creepy, but it's very effective, especially when you're deep in a sales cycle with someone. It's less scary than, if you're some rando calling them.
Yeah, it's getting those good insights and being strategic, not creepy. You're using the tools at your disposal.
Strategically creepy. That's a good way to put it. All right, do you guys want to take one more question?
Sure, we'll pick a good one.
A lot of pressure. Keep typing, guys. Give us some more.
So here's a great question from Mohammed. Hey, I know it's all out of topic, but I'm just wondering what's the synergy, the connection or synergy between Copper and PandaDoc? So
yeah, I didn't speak to this because I didn't want to be too pluggy, but yeah, you definitely can.
I mean, somebody asked, so I'm going to say it.
Somebody had.
PandaDoc has built a really nice Chrome extension that directly ties into Copper. So you can, in the design of Copper, it's simple, intuitive, and easy to use. So from a CRM standpoint, super powerful, not bogged down with too much all-in-one functionality. So you can have PandaDoc leading cutting-edge e-signature software that is going to live right attached to your Copper. And so PandaDoc is actually heavily used by our client base as a way to leverage the integration there. Great question, Mohammed.
That was a beautiful explanation, man. Good job.
Oh my goodness. We're getting some good ones here. Okay. Yeah. Strategically creepy is what my ex-wife dumped me for. That is amazing.
That went to all attendees as well, so everyone else can see it too.
Everybody can
So.
see it. That's great.
Panda Doc will not lead to a divorce. I will promise that right now.
No. And if it does, then at least you're going to know which other lawyers it was forwarded to, so you can be ready to see what the bill's going to be.
True.
Well, Jenna, do you want to wrap us up here? Or?
Yeah. So if there's any questions that went unanswered, we are more than happy to answer those. So you'll be getting a follow-up email either later today or tomorrow morning from us with, like I said, the PDF slides and the recording of this, and along with the information to follow up any questions, or you have the contact information here, sales at Copper, sales at Panda Doc, if you are interested in seeing that integration with the both of them, or the products individually. So thank you guys so much for being here. Anything else?
Well,
nice little sign off, everybody.
It's been a pleasure.
Awesome, guys. Yep. You can find me on LinkedIn, Patrick Downs, patrick.downs at pandadoc.com. Quick plug. Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right.